Well, things got a little heated over at Fox News when liberal commentator Jessica Tarlov reminded her four MAGA co hosts of the various hypocrisies, broken promises, and stupid decisions made by Donald Trump in just about 48 hours back in office. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. Man, once again, hats off to Jessica Tarlov, friend of the show, someone I deeply respect. Got to meet her at the DNC. She's going to have a rough 4 years ahead of her, and I think by extension, so are her four MAGA co-hosts. It's going to be rough on Jessica because Donald Trump is president, and that's just really bad for everybody. It's going to be rough for her four MAGA co-hosts because Jessica's smarter than they are, has a better command of the facts, and despite their attempts to heckle and interrupt and hector her, she's just always a step ahead. She always brings the receipts. And this conversation got a little heated when she pointed out, again, the various broken promises and hypocrisies and stupid decisions, some of which may be unconstitutional, to her MAGA co-hosts. And we're going to start with this one here.
But when the judge says, this is what the people voted for, some of it they absolutely did not. And Donald Trump promised that he would bring your costs down right away. And he revoked Biden's policy to lower prescription drug prices or to make it so Medicare can't negotiate itself for prescription drug prices. That's not cool.
Where is that? Where is that?
It's look in the list.
Well, show me.
Well, what do you mean?
There's a lot more to that issue, but yeah.
Okay.
So again, they're referring to something we discussed in a previous video. Jessica, is an executive order that Donald Trump signed. Again, for reminders, we are going to play this because, again, apparently MAGA doesn't have the facts.
Inflation is destroying our country. It's destroying our families. We will target everything from car affordability to housing affordability to insurance costs to supply chain issues. We have the worst supply chain we've ever had in the history of the country, to the price of prescription drugs. Inflation.
So again, Donald Trump says on the campaign trail, I'm going to tackle prescription drug prices. Then he gets in office, and what's he do? As we discussed in a previous video, he signs an executive order rescinding one of President Biden's executive orders aimed at lowering prescription drug prices with respect to Medicare and Medicaid. Trump rolls back effort to lower Medicare and Medicaid drug costs. Quote, the executive order halts an effort to cap the copayment for generic medications at $2 for Medicare beneficiaries. It's been widely reported. We did a video on this. Once again, Donald Trump walking back a major campaign promise. He campaigned, of course, in 2016, as I mentioned in this previous video, on lowering prescription drug prices. He failed. President Biden succeeded with the Inflation Reduction Act, which forced big pharmaceutical companies to negotiate drug prices with Medicare for the first time. Trump campaigned on it, failed to get it done. President Biden got it done. And here we already see in just 48 hours, Donald Trump trying to roll some of these efforts back. Extremely counterproductive. It's extremely counterintuitive, especially if you really care about your voters, which Donald Trump obviously does not. So again, I don't expect her MAGA co-host to be prepared on the facts. Dana Perino says there's more to it. Well, then, Dana, why don't you speak up and refute Jessica? But of course, she can't because Jessica's right and is also better than Dana. So here's another clip.
Did the American people on November 5th vote for 1,660 Afghans who are being resettled here, have gone through the government process, people who helped us during the war in Afghanistan, worked as translators, risking their lives, people who are on target lists for the Taliban? They had their flights canceled.
The answer is yes, they did vote for it.
No, they didn't.
Yes, they did.
If you sat there.
Yes, they did.
No, they
Sorry,
didn't.
Trump did not hide any of this from anyone.
That's not true.
And that's the difference.
You guys sat here and you argued that the Afghanistan withdrawal was one of the worst atrocities in foreign policy, that we left people behind, not only American service members and Americans who are still living, the American service members who passed away tragically and the ones who are still living, but the people that helped us for years during that war. And now you say, oh, it's fine that their flights are just canceled?
No, I didn't say it's fine. I'm saying that Americans voted for it. That's the difference. I don't have to say it's fine. I'm just telling you the reality.
Did you vote?
What a dumb level of cope from Greg Gutfeld, who is a uniquely stupid person. I'm not saying it's fine. I'm just saying Americans voted for it. Well, number one was abandoning our Afghan allies, a major campaign promise. Pointed out, Greg, number one. Number two, aren't you supposed to be a brave culture warrior and political commentator, Greg? find the testicular fortitude and say whether or not you think it's a fine decision by Donald Trump. You won't, because you're a coward and a loser, and you will always lose the debate against Jessica. And it's so funny to see this on full display, but she's 100% correct. When President Biden completed the Afghanistan withdrawal, Fox was apoplectic. Apoplectic. Oh my God, it's a tragedy. It's the worst thing in the history of civilization. It was a major defeat by the Biden administration. And yet he has no smoke for what's going on now. So Reuters is discussing this exclusive. Trump to pull nearly 1,660 Afghan refugees from flights, say U.S. official and advocate, because of his executive orders. Staggering. Staggering. I'll also remind people who criticize the Afghanistan withdrawal, because obviously it wasn't perfect. 13 service people died. It was quite chaotic. But Donald Trump set the stage for that, number one, with his disastrous Doha agreement. Donald Trump was the one who took us from 1,300 U.S. troops, or 13,000 U.S. troops down to 2,500. He left President Biden 2,500 U.S. troops as 75 to 80,000 Taliban insurgents were sweeping the country. He cut the Afghan government out of the negotiations, demoralizing the Afghan government. There was a DOD Special Inspector General's report on the Afghanistan withdrawal, which concluded, of all the terrible decisions that contributed to the collapse of Afghanistan, Donald Trump signing the Doha agreement was the single worst one. It set the stage for the whole failure. Trump continued to diminish U.S. forces. He honored every demand that the Taliban made of him. Everything. Donald Trump, you will do this, 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 and this. Donald Trump did what the Taliban wanted, but he didn't enforce his demands on the Taliban. So the only thing the Taliban didn't do was shoot U.S. troops during a certain period. All the other conditions they were supposed to meet that Donald Trump demanded, Trump didn't bother to enforce. He just kicked the can down the road and left President Biden the worst situation imaginable. And if President Biden had violated the deal and said, no, we're not, we're going to renegotiate, the Taliban said they would have started shooting U.S. troops again. And then we would have effectively reinvaded Afghanistan or left with our tail tucked between our legs after the Taliban started shooting at us. So it was a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation set up by Donald Trump himself. That's just an objective fact. If you criticize any of President Biden's particular decisions, feel free. But the broader scope and the broader quagmire, that was set up by Trump himself. And people who say, well, 13 service people died on Biden's watch, that's true. And that is tragic. And you're free to criticize him because he was the commander-in-chief. But by that logic, Donald Trump is objectively worse because more soldiers died in Afghanistan on Trump's watch than Biden's. So even by that grisly metric, Donald Trump is objectively worse. So here's another clip, a last clip of Jessica and Greg Gutfeld in particular sparring over birthright citizenship.
I don't have to say it's fine. I'm just telling you the reality.
Did you vote to revoke birthright citizenship for the children of people who are here legally?
Do you understand what that means?
Yeah, I do.
Tell me about it. Tell me what birthright citizenship meant.
Well, I think when Donald Trump was talking about it and disparaging people over here, he was talking about undocumented people who come and drop their anchor babies. He wasn't talking about people who are here on student visas, people who are here on H-1B visas.
You're always going to choose this weird exception.
No,
the fact is the system is
weird.
being gamed. Americans voted for Donald Trump because they saw these systems, these institutions being gamed. The asylum issue, the birthright citizen issue, Title IX issues. Every single part of society was being gamed by the left. And finally, Americans got pushed too far. The point is, you don't have to like everything in the restaurant to like the restaurant. There are things, I go to a restaurant, I don't eat any seafood, but I like that restaurant because it's got steak. There are things.
He's so incredibly dumb. I mean, he should thank his lucky stars that he's got backup in the form of Jeanine Pirro, Dana Perino, Jesse Waters, because he needs all the help he can get. What an incredibly stupid level of commentary. So we can't criticize Trump because Trump does other things that you like. And that the things you don't like bears no reflection on the overall value of the man himself because it's like a restaurant. Here's the difference, dumbass. You can pick your food in a restaurant a la carte. You're not being forced to eat the seafood that you say you don't like in the restaurant. When Donald Trump's president, we can't pick and choose the policies of his which affect us. It's up to him and his Republican government, and we're all affected by it. What a stupid metaphor. What a stupid analogy. This guy is so incredibly dumb. I'll also remind you that birthright citizenship is a product of a constitutional amendment. It's even above federal statute. It's a matter of the Constitution. I thought you guys were the constitutional conservatives. Interesting. Only when it's convenient. And then the asylum situation. Asylum, changes to asylum revisions, that needs to be done by Congress. There's no doubt that asylum laws need to be changed. But Donald Trump torpedoed attempts to do just that because he wanted to use it as a campaign wedge issue during this last election cycle. So he's not exactly a credible source on this stuff, too. Really dumb by Greg Gutfeld. And I totally understand why Jessica Tarlov is so fed up with his shit. And again, Jessica, if you're watching, shout out to you, but it's only just begun. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.